Hey guys, welcome back to the Rhythm Section, brought to you as always by The Mind Refinery. I'm Kyle Bodanis. For this very special episode, we're getting back to our look at the creative world of Kanye West, with a deep dive into My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which just had its 10-year anniversary. We recorded this along with the remaining episodes of the series towards the beginning of lockdown. Before we, kind of worked the home recording kinks out, the show actually predates Corbin and I creating the Rhythm Section. It was a really great conversation. We had fun doing it. We hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have time, follow The Mind Refinery on social media. And now, here's the show. All right, guys, for the second leg of our deep dive into the creative world of Kanye West, we have the incomparable Coburn Blair.
How you guys doing?
And we have Mind Refinery creative Andrew Lanza.
Hey.
Okay, guys, just because of time constraints, we definitely have to move on.
I think so.
I want to move on to what many people, and I believe, is the masterpiece.
The magnum opus.
The magnum opus, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Initial reactions to this album.
I mean, this album, in light of all that's happened, like we talked about, like him getting called an asshole by Trump, like everyone in the media was hounding him. Like you couldn't really go through the news cycle without hearing like Kanye is the biggest dickhead. Like I think a lot of normal people at this time started having like very, very strong opinions about Kanye, and none of them were good, and not a lot of them were tied to his music or like his body of work. But like this album, like I think like you got to talk about the SNL performance.
Yeah,
because there'd been like
one of the all-time greats.
Silence from Kanye and like speculation on what he was doing, what he was feeling, and kind of in the same way that 808s was like a lot of turmoil. Like this, I think, was turmoil at like a more grandiose scale, because you have like the president and whoever else involved, and Taylor Swift like embodied America's sweetheart. So you have that kind of thing with her being this like young white girl and like this like black, like, and also she's dressed in white at the time, and Kanye's dressed in black. And you have this whole kind of tumultuous thing leading up to it. And then Kanye comes out and the stage is like all wrapped, and he's like just there, like with a huge chain on, and NPC just like firing off. And it's just, I don't know, it's like honestly, you had to like be there.
Yeah, white America was not happy with that. They were just like, we can't handle this. She's an angel. And they went crazy.
Yeah. For me, so as I've said, like I've come to Kanye later. This was actually my first Kanye album. I'll paint the scene for you, if you will. I was heading down to Bonnaroo in Tennessee, and somebody was like, "Oh, like we're like picking something to put on during the drive," and someone was like, "Oh, I'm gonna put on the new Kanye." My first thoughts, I'm like, "Come on, fuck that! Like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this new Kanye." And then like I got overruled very quickly, and whatever. We're driving through like Tennessee or like Kentucky or some shit. And I'm like, fuck, fine, whatever. I'm going to sit here and listen to this new Kanye. And it was like super quiet. Everybody was kind of snoozing, whatever. And I just really took in this album. And very, like, almost instantly, I went from like, I don't want to hear this album, turn it off, to like, holy fuck. Like, I was completely blown away by this album. By the end of the album, I was like, God damn. Like, I didn't know people made music like this. Like, I can't even explain to you. I did a complete 180, not only on this album, but on Kanye. And this is what made me go back and listen to all the old back catalog and really actually become a genuine Kanye fan. So like, yeah, just on a first listen to, again, me being like highly resistant to listening to it, and like, even almost tainting it from the beginning, I was like within like half a song, like within Gorgeous, I was already hooked. I was like, okay, holy fuck, this is next level. I need more of this.
So both NME and Rolling Stone said this was one of the greatest records of all time. Debuted at number 1 on the Billboard charts, number 1 on a bunch of year-end lists, number 1 on a bunch of best of 2010s lists, snubbed at the Grammys.
I don't understand that.
Well, to me, it's like fucking, they're tone deaf anyways. I mean, Jethro Tull winning for Best Metal, like, come on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know why I wrote that, because thinking about it, I'm like, they're so fucking tone deaf and not in tune with the music industry anyways. George Condo's album art is mentioned among the greatest album design
Absolutely.
and art as of all time. The Billboard magazine said it was the 33rd best album cover of all time. It got higher than Blind Faith's
Which
record.
which one? Which one? The like the sex act on the cover with like
Well, just the
with,
whole
like, the guy
album
and the
art.
girl?
Like this guy, like
Or like
is,
every
like,
version of it.
like this whole thing is like they're talking about the cover in the same breath as like, are you experienced Zeppelin 4, fucking Thriller, Purple Rain,
Pink Floyd.
Dark Side of the Moon, and Animals.
Yeah.
Blind Faith's record was on it. Fucking Layla and Other Sort of Love Songs was on it. Like these are like
What about Mars
classic.
Volta? Any Mars Volta albums on there?
No, they're not fucking. No,
What?
Billboard's
It's-
no. Billboard's not gonna have the. Billboard's not gonna have the guts to put a Mars. They don't even know who. They don't know who Mars Volta is.
They used what's his name? Storm Thurkson from that
Yeah, that's what you
Pink
get.
Floyd used. Anyway, I
That's
thought
what you
maybe
get.
it would be up there.
For which record? Bedlam and Goliath.
I believe was it Bedlam and Goliath? I don't know. I'll get back to you on that one. I think it might be multiple, but I could be wrong.
So
Anyway, this is off the top of my head. I wasn't expecting to talk about Mars Volta.
no, it's okay. Standout tracks, guys. What did we love?
I mean, I think like Gorgeous for me, like
Yeah, that's mine.
bring me back to Kanye and Kid Cudi, and like, you know, a continuation of the 808s in Heartbreak, and then also having the veteran like Raekwon on there. I think I have to give it to Power just based off of like the SNL performance.
Yeah.
I heard they had to change. They had to like apparently after that performance, it was like something like now you can't like bring staging anymore if you're a musical performer because like he found out the exact dimensions of like the sound like the sound stage for the artist performance and like used every square inch of it. Yeah,
which is
now
so Kanye.
Yeah.
it's so Kanye. Like literally every. So now apparently now ever since then, like before you used to have like not crazy like elaborate setups, but you used to have like some bands come in and have like some staging. But ever since that, like apparently like yeah, now you cannot like you can bring your shit and like maybe like a couple things, but like yeah, no full on staging.
Gorgeous is good. I mean, anytime we're bringing out Raekwon, I'm totally down for it. Power, using the 21st century Schizoid Man sample, fantastic. I fucking really
Is
love
that King Crimson?
That's King
sample?
Crimson. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's King
thought
Crimson.
so.
I love Monster because
I was gonna say,
he's bringing everybody out for his let's Bon Iver. Let's bring him out. Let's do it.
dude,
Let's have
fucking
Jay-Z,
Nicki
Rick
Minaj-
Ross. Her fucking verse on
her
this
verse
is awesome.
insane.
Really good. And I mean, So Appalled as well. Like everybody's on this thing. And
Yeah, I don't know, like Devil in a New Dress too. I think that's like one of my favorite Rick Ross verses. Like
it's great.
The production on that is just so lush. Like it sets such a tone.
Honestly, for me, yeah, I would have to say Gorgeous and Monster, but then also maybe a little bit of a random choice, but it like I don't know what it is. It really hits me. Fucking Blame Game. Something about Blame Game.
John
and, like,
Legend's
you have,
so
like,
good on it.
yeah, John Legend. You have the Chris Rock outro, but that song, man, like the lyrics of that song are fucking. I don't know, man. They're that. I listen to that song when I want to feel sad. I don't know. It's a deep one to me. I really like fucking Blame Game, but fucking Runaway, so good too.
So among the accolades I listed, Rolling Stone magazine called this the Sgt. Pepper's of hip hop. What's your thoughts on this? Is this the lead? This is the leading candidate for the best Kanye West album. Let's like, do we agree on that, or let's talk about all that? Let's unpack.
Yeah, I'd say first of all, yes. This is not only is this my favorite Kanye West album by a mile. I would have to put this in my top 5 of all time, maybe even like top 3 albums of all time. So when they said this is the Sgt. Pepper's of like this is Kanye's Sgt. Pepper, like the Sgt. Pepper of hip hop, like what do you think they meant by that? I want to give some context to this.
I think they meant they were looking at it in terms of an artistic expression. How Sgt. Pepper's in 1967, when it drops, has a massive impact on rock music. In fact, the next decade of music that came after that, and 50 years of music after that, it was heavily influenced and almost entirely has a debt to Sgt. Pepper's, because
this is a studio album. This is not something that is meant to be reproduced. This is the studio being used as an instrument. And you see this with Jimi Hendrix, you see this with The Who, and you see all these, these acts. Fucking Motown definitely is influenced by this. And you start seeing artistic expressions by people like Marvin Gaye, where they're using the studio to kind of express themselves. And it really makes producing a massive part of what is happening in popular music. And I think that they were trying to say that really no hip-hop record has achieved that level of artistic expression from a thematic element, from a sonic element, from the people playing on it, and just what it will mean for the music moving forward.
In that context, I'll just say, sorry, let me just say, I'll say yes.
I think I'd say no on that stand.
Oh.
I think this album it's his most charged album. I think it is his most like spanning album in terms of like collaboration, production. And I feel like this album was almost made in the vacuum of all the kind of turmoil and like where Kanye was at before this, in maybe the same way 808s was. But I think this is his most like widely accessible to the most people, and for that. But I don't think it's his most influential album. Like I don't think like people like. I think there's elements that people have like kind of bored from this album, but I don't think that this album like influenced hip hop in such a profound way as maybe 808s did. I think like this album is great, and I think it's maybe his magnum opus in a way. And I think like if you synthesize everything that Kanye is, it leads to this album, and like it like perfectly aligns to this point. But I don't think that this is the most influential album that he made.
I agree with that. I agree. I think 808 100%. I don't think many people will argue that it's probably more influential on the current state of not only hip hop but music.
I think that's the big thing, is that 808 is the influential record. This for me is he's taken everything that he's learned thus far and put it all together.
Yeah,
and that's
like from
yeah. Because if you're to show what is Kanye West's sound, if you were to give one record to show somebody that defines his entire career, let's say you were forced to do that, you're probably going to give them this record. Not because it's not because it's necessarily his most influential, or you can argue about whether or not it's the best, but it's the most encompassing of everything from the time he was cutting beats to the time where he finished 808. Like this is that album. Like that's the album.
I think for me, I think you almost need. I might put the Late Registration there, because I think there's something. Like a lot of the beauty in this album is everything that kind of came before it and everything that led up to it. And I think you get a lot of this album, like even like the way that like you listen to it for the first time in the car, and like it like kind of shaped you. But I think like knowing something about Kanye's history before this album improves like the listening of this album.
That's interesting. It's when put against the context of its predecessors, it does it for me. That's yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, late Registration for me, if I think that's his best record, I think that's the best. I like personally what I love the most and I connect with. Yeah, like I think Late Registration. I'm just curious as why do you think that looking back and it being contextualized against the rest of his career is why they give this record that much accolades? Also, in that the Late Registration was only his second album, so it's almost like you're not going to give that to him yet, if that makes any sense, and that we want to see what else he's going to do yet.
Yeah, I think so. I think like obviously this album is great. Like it's like pretty much flawless to me. But I think there's a beauty in like knowing the context of this album that like makes it stand out in a way that without context, I could see maybe somebody like not getting the album all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
That like with a Late Registration or like this album almost feels like it's like the necessary end. I feel like
he almost
of a
like
chapter.
put the chapter he's closing, he almost like put on hold for 808. Like 808 was kind of like a side tangent that he didn't like go back to until like Kids See Ghosts.
Well, yeah, well, I think that's like kind of like what I was saying before, and like sorry to keep bringing up Good Ass Job, but like even this album in like the year leading up when he signed Big Sean and like a few other people were around, they knew this album as it was going to be called Good Ass Job because he was going to go back to the tangent of like graduation and everything before that. So this album, I think, with the whole Taylor Swift thing and with like the way America and the world was against him, like that's why he kind of twisted what that was into My Dark Twisted Fantasy.
So from a thematic standpoint, Andrew Martin of Prefix Magazine described this as a meditation on fame. Like, do you agree with that statement? Do you think that also this carries enough of the weighty thematic elements to really be compared to an album like Sgt. Pepper's?
I don't think you can necessarily just boil it down to one theme, honestly. Like, I don't know, I haven't read this guy's rest of his article, but like to say it's like, I mean, yeah, it does meditate on fame, but it far from only meditates on fame. Like, you have so many different themes on here, like lost, like, love ending, love starting, the current climate in America at the time.
But do you not, just to interject, and I'll ask you this question, do you not think that those particular themes are through the lens of fame?
I think they're through his lens, and he's famous.
Through his lens,
yes,
yeah, and his experience of fame.
But I don't think, yes, like you can't not. But I don't know. I don't think that it's, I don't know. I see what you're saying, and like, okay, like it is like a through line, but I don't know. I just feel like it touches on so many more themes than just that.
No, because I think you said something interesting there, and I'm just curious as to. It's mostly me asking is how, tight is this? You know what I mean? Like, how many like frayed pieces there are? How well is he bringing it all together? What is unifying about it? What isn't unifying about it? So I thought it was an interesting point. What do you think, Homer?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely like a reflection on fame and like how fame kind of corrupts. It's him kind of self-reflecting on everything that has happened before it. Like, I think Power is ultimately about that. I think All the Lights is about that and touches on that. I think even like when he repurposes Gil Scott-Heron on Who Will Survive in America, that's apparent. Like, I don't think there's an aspect of this album that's not like completely like encompassed by that.
808s is largely about the heartbreak associated, with fame, whereas this is more of a vitriolic musing on it, where it's a little bit showing more of the bitterness towards it, rather than, and like looking at it from the context of race, looking at it from, the context of wealth and that kind of thing. I think that, he does really well on driving those things home with this. I think this will be, I mean, given when you're putting it against the backdrop of then he's going to move to Yeezus, and then like Yeezus is the complete vitriol. It's like it is almost the protest record from him, right? It's like, I'm going to give you, it's the, Neil Young or Lou Reed, I'm going to give you a bunch of fucking static on a recording because I have to contractually give you an album, right? Like that kind of thing, except that it was his version of it, where of course there has to be a level of fucking opulence to it, but that we'll get into that next episode.
Well, I think too with 808s, like 808s is a record that was made in the moment. So the record, it was just after those things have happened. Whereas I think this album is a further distillation of thoughts and feelings he was having at the time. And I think 808s was a dump of all those thoughts and feelings onto wax, and and he put that record out. Whereas this is those thoughts and feelings that he was having at the 808s time, and combined with being like the most hated person in America for a time period or whatever. And it boils down to this. And like you said, where Yeezus is a protest record, I think record is him kind of like spitting and scoffing at the idea of fame, and that he was so important that the president had to say something, like why does he have all this power? Like, what does this mean? And how does he understand and interpolate it?
This kind of moves well into it combines into the, kind of the next question I had, which was, how has Kanye West arrived at this point? And like, how do you explain the progression from 808 to this record? Like, how do you explain that? Because it's almost like an anime side mission, 808, because I think that you were right in that it is kind of, when given what he's about to do, it's 808 maybe was just the emotional record, the blood on the tracks, if you will, to use a Bob Dylan example, where he had to get that, where it was about that expression, he required it, and then everything kind of, gets back to the main narrative.
Well, I think too, like, this record gets back to Kanye having larger rooms and larger collaborative bodies. So you have, like, obviously Elton John's on the record. He has, like, Rihanna. He has like repurposes Gil Scott Heron. Like I said, he has, like, it's just
Justin Vernon.
Like, Justin Vernon, yeah, like his contributions are amazing on this album. So I think it's him getting back to, like, it's a bit more in line with Late Registration, where, like, he's doing, like, a big body of work and big kind of collaborations. And I think 808s was a bit more narrow in scope and a bit more focused on his feelings, whereas this is like his feelings plus, pulling from a different, more like sources.
I agree. The limit in scope, the more limited scope, because there is something to be said about having, a more focused thing. It's why always the bigger, like, for me, doesn't seem like Sgt. Pepper's. For me, this record seems like the White Album. That's what it seems like. And it seems like but
there's so much filler on the White Album.
I know it's much tighter. There is, so I know. I don't want to hear fucking Rocky Raccoon. If you would like to add us about,
I fucking love Rocky Raccoon.
Get out. Just please disconnect your Zoom. And
is Rocky Raccoon the Beatles' Drunken Hot Girls?
No,
Drunken Hot Girls.
That's
is better.
Bungalow Bill. That's Bungalow Bill.
Yeah. 100%. You know what I mean? But I think this is where he's experimenting and stuff. I've tighter than White Album, and you can at me on fucking social media about that. I love the fucking White Album, but there's tracks I can't deal with it on it. Just give me a Revolver or Let It Be.
Oh yeah.
So, I think that this record is sonically everywhere and create. He's speaking in terms of colors and textures about it, and I think that you probably need 808 to get to this. But I understand where people, like, can't see the musical connection because it's hard, and I think it's probably more embedded in process. But I mean, definitely at the end of the day, you're bringing the Jeff Basker along. I think he's the big through line through this.
Yeah, I think, like, there's elements of 808s in Hell of a Life. There's elements of it in, like, the drum pad, the 808 being used. Like, there's elements of it in Runaway. I think one question I have is, do you think Kanye could make this album again?
No.
What do you mean by that? Like, instead of making it then, making it now, or like make something similar now?
Something similar that sounds like this album, or like has the same textures or qualities. Like, could he, like, remake this album in a way that, like, maybe Late Registration is an improvement on College Dropout? Could he make this album again in a different way, or like?
I'm gonna say no, because it's these kind of things are like bottling lightning.
Yeah, it's such a product of the time. I feel like of that, like, not time as in like the contextual time, like that specific time
in his life. Yeah, Ed Bradley did this interview with Bob. I think it was Ed Bradley who did this interview with Bob Dylan, and he's like, "Can you do you think you could write another All Right Ma, I'm Only Dying?" He's like, "No, not a chance." He's like, those things happen, and for some people they don't happen to. He almost described it, and this is Bob Dylan describing it, as a blessing that he received from, like, a higher power. That he's like, I'm lucky that I'm the artist who got that, who, like, had those moments of, fleeting genius. And he's like, you have 40 million moments of non-genius to every one of your genius moments. And I think this is probably where everything comes together for Kanye West. Like, he's at a point now, other than Jesus is King, where he's going to put out a record. It's good. Radiohead is like that. Marvin Gaye got like that towards the end of his career. I mean, even to an extent, Michael Jackson was like that. Even in the later part of his career, he's still putting out records that you're not going to say are bad ever. And I think with this, you get to those moments where you reach your ceiling, and for him, it's not even a ceiling. It's just you reach you fly to the sun, and this time you didn't fly too close to it, and it just all came together in this moment. And I think pop music is littered with them, and this was his.
Let me just say, if he can make an album like this again, I'd love to hear it.
Yes, 100%.
That sounds like a good time. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say probably no. I don't think he can.
What do you think?
This is the album that I'd be looking for from Kanye again to like at the current point he's at. Like, this is the type of album I'd like want to hear from him again. I think this is the album I'm like looking for kind of every release, like maybe from the TLP, like the Pablo era on.
So for this one of the big things for this is collaborations. He continues to double down on them. You know, he finds ways to get the best out of everyone in the studio. This is where the Miles Davis comparison comes from. How does this rank? You know, how does he rank as one of the great leaders in the studio? You know, like how does he, when we're looking at music, how does he rank there?
This is probably one of the last occasions we'll get with like Drake and Pusha T on the same album for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, especially with
take a picture because you're not going to see it again.
Yeah, that's not going to be going down anytime soon. But I fucking love Push, man. He kills this. He kills this track.
Yeah.
Or he's on a couple tracks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on So Appalled and Runaway.
That's right.
I think like also like having Nicki Minaj as an intro is something that I would have never called for like ever, but like it doesn't bug me.
Not at all.
What was her I don't really remember her. Like, what was going on with her at the time? Like, I know she says like she has no album out yet on the track. Like, how popular is she at this moment? I don't really remember.
This is like what, 2010, so she was kind of coming where she had transitioned out of like being a Gucci Mane protege, and she was kind of in the Young Money camp. So this is like her and Drake's ascendant era. So it's before she kind of became the pop phenomenon, but she was transitioning out of being like the female like hood rapper.
The only artist,
I gotcha.
The only artists who are really working at this level in the studio is probably Trent Reznor. Kanye West says, you know, like that's the level of which he's using the studio to his, and he's heavily influenced by Trent Reznor, which would explain a fucking ton. But like you're looking at, you know, because he's a producer and he's a fucking musician.
I just love to hear Elton John on the album though. I love hearing like the Elton John vocals.
Because he's got the, I mean, part of genius is picking your collaborators, you know, knowing who would be good on it. Who the fuck thought you're gonna bring Elton John on this shit? And in his interviews, he almost revels in that. He's like, he loves it when people are like, I didn't think he was gonna bring that guy on. I never thought about doing that. He loves when people say that. He loves that it never occurred to them. And I fucking love it too. I love that, like, just looking, don't even listen to the album. Just look at the features and stuff on it. It's fucking fantastic.
Like, the only person that I can say who's like doing it to like in a way that's like almost like Kanye level or like Kanye-esque is like Travis, I think, in terms of bringing, you know, different people. Like he'll have like the 1975 on his song, or he'll like be able to like incorporate like Gunna or whoever, and like kind of pull in some of these newer acts and some of the bands and stuff into the studio. But like I don't think there's like really anyone doing it like today in hip hop.
No.
Like, you know, like just working with like that broad a range of artists and crafting like a solid sound that like doesn't sound like jarring or, you know, out of his depth. He's never out of his depth in his collaboration, which is like like amazing.
And Travis Scott, I mean, he's obviously taking a cue from him, and kind of how Kanye West looked at how Jay-Z put together an organization of people to work around. Like you see the collaborations on the Black Album and stuff, and it's just like a who's who of producers and talent, and the result is this fantastic record. I think his idea was, and this is why he's already bringing in Lupe Fiasco for Late Registration, in that he's like, I need to create my world and my creative world so I can bring these people in, and then they become, you know, arrows in his quiver. And
yeah, and he also it's not just that too. Like I feel like he genuinely wants to like put people on. Like he wants to like get people popular. You know what I mean? Not only is like, yeah, he wants to develop people to be like, yo, I want to like collaborate with you in this, but like he wants genuinely good things for these people. And like I definitely think that's something that needs to be shouted out.
I agree with that. There is some backlash against him though, that he kind of like doesn't always fucking follow through and keep going with people that he proteges. But I feel like I agree with that, like at its core, because he knows listen, without Dame Dash, he's not getting signed. We're probably not getting signed because he get turned down by a lot, like by a lot of people. And this is one of the most mainstream, like this guy, and as I said, this guy is dictating what music is. It's one of those things that people are clearly just not getting, not because he's not good, because people just don't get it. They just don't. People are way ahead of they can be way ahead of their time. The Velvet Underground was way ahead of their time. Fucking not too many people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people went to see them, but the influence is immense. And maybe maybe that's at that point, that's his destiny. But then fucking Dame Dash shows up. And I think this is why he's a megalomaniac and then simultaneously has a super healthy ego, because he wants that. He wants to bring that along. And I would definitely argue that as well. It's kind of weird, the duality with him, because he's either insufferable or inspiring.
Well, I think there's also something that like I wanted to touch on too for this era of collaborations. Like during this time period, he was doing these Good Friday releases where he would do like these songs with a bunch of different artists, and they would come out like every Friday. And I don't know if it was even leading up to the album. It was just kind of like in the same time period of the album. So he's putting out like a lot of music that was really good with a lot of people, and like they were kind of just throwaway tracks because it was like pre-Spotify or whatever days. And then some of the tracks would go on to make the album. But I think it's interesting too that to have like he has a few acts on this album that like have two or more features. Like Rick Ross is on 2 songs, Pusha T's on 2 songs, Jay-Z's on 2 songs. I think Bon Iver's on 2 songs, and Nicki Minaj 1 verse and the intro. So I think that's also something like really interesting, like to kind of repurpose artists. And he has them on multiple songs, and it's not boring. You're not like, oh, I heard Pusha like a song ago. I don't want to hear Pusha from this song. It's like, oh no, like it just flows.
If anything, it helps to tighten the record.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not having too many one-offs. I mean, when Nicki Minaj comes in, but she's got a pretty big verse. Like she's in the track she's in it. So
that's like a highlight out. That's like a highlight of the album.
It is too. Yeah, exactly. It's like one of those. It's definitely one of the high points on the record. On a record that has tons of fucking high points.
Exactly. That's really saying something.
Yeah, exactly. But I think having individuals on there for multiple songs, it prevents it from being disjointed. Little flourishes of Kid Cudi, and then big flourishes of Kid Cudi, and it's like he brings in the roster. And he had everyone in suits. I remember Chris Rock, his interview, he was talking about, he's like, I went in and fucking everyone was in suits. And, this is, again, it's going back to these images of jazz in the 50s and this idea of coming in and it's fucking work. It's not, they're going to have fun, but you're very much here to do something.
And yeah, they were like in the studio for like 12 hours a day, like 4 till 4.
Yeah.
I think that was his like Rosewood era, he called it. Like he had this like kind of like concept, like a high-minded concept. So everyone from Good Music was in suits at the time. And it was just like a unique like thing. Because I think like Kanye became very insular after the Taylor Swift moment. And like he became very like kind of quiet to the public. But he was doing all these different kind of things within him, his camp, which was really interesting.
Well, for sure. Because everyone took I listen, the Taylor Swift thing, yeah, he's a dick. People take everything too fucking far.
Yo, at the end of the day, okay, let's not forget for a hot second, he was right.
Obviously, he was right. He wasn't.
Notice how we weren't like, yo, for that specific Taylor Swift video, that's iconic. We're like, it's like, no, she lost. Beyonce's Single Ladies lost. Like, you know what I mean? Like Kanye was right. He was a dick about it, but he was right.
No, he was completely right. 100%. I think, and. I do think that maybe someone should have mentioned that it was a little ridiculous. Again, this is one of those things where people just, I think they don't get it, because you're really at that point getting into when Beyonce is getting fucking really good. And obviously her high watermark is Lemonade, in terms of like, that's her record. That is stamped. That's going on her epitaph, right? I'm Beyonce. I made this. and I get to be I'm legendary for a bunch of other reasons, but that record is just another thing. When I listen to it, my jaw dropped. But so I think that there's a little bit of that. I definitely think that Beyonce at that level, I think in general, Lance will fucking disagree with this, works at a higher level than Taylor Swift. So
what? Listen, I love Taylor Swift, but I enjoy Taylor Swift like I enjoy Frosted Flakes. Like, you know what I mean? It's like yummy and it's delicious, but it's like there's no sustenance.
Yeah, but you're not gonna fucking nunchaku people if they attack Frosted Flakes.
That's true. Sorry, what were you saying, Gober?
I was saying, like, you only enjoy her in the morning and occasionally as like a late night snack.
Listen, I'll eat Frosted Flakes any goddamn time of the day.
Yeah, this guy is definitely, when he says Frosted Flakes, it really means filet mignon in his twisted world. But yeah, he was absolutely correct. We got to get going, but before we go, I just wanted to ask one more thing. What are our thoughts on Amber Rose's vocals?
Well, I mean, I think they're like a highlight of the blame game. Like the Easy Taught Me. Like, I don't know. I thought that was like, it pulls you into this world at the time, and like this like musical interludes, like the beat and everything, like just the way it was all built, and like it kind of pulls you out, and like it's this like beautiful interlude about something like really so lewd and like so like risque, but it just works, and it's like it's over the most lush instrumentals. It's just like it's amazing, I think.
Hey man, I already said Blame Game's like my favorite on the album.
She does pretty fucking good.
And I think like too, this is his first like high profile, like, because he'd been engaged before. This is his first like high profile relationship, and obviously he would get to Kim Kardashian later. But like that was like, this was such a whole thing. Like everywhere Kanye went, Amber Rose was there, and like there's a whole like kind of culture around that. Do
we think the music would have been better with Amber Rose?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not gonna touch that one. I'll pass.
Same.
Oh, okay, guys. On the Amber Rose note, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.